Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Orgasm Oracle podcast show. What prevents orgasm? So, I'm Nadia. I'm just on my own today. My tits are out if you're watching this on YouTube. My tits are a huge part of this brand. And they are real. I've literally been asked by doctors before, like giving me breast exams, like, are your tits real? Because they're just, yeah, they're quite firm. Um, yeah, so I'm here to talk today, not about my tits, sorry. But what prevents orgasm? So before we talked about like what is an orgasm, today we're going to talk about what prevents orgasms. So a lot of people in general struggle with orgasm, hence I'm an orgasm empowerment coach. And yeah, this is let me just start by saying this is a broad, complex topic, okay? If you are looking for a quick solution for your orgasm issues, go to an MD, get some prescription, and just fake it till you make it or whatever, right? Um, in my health journey, I'm not fully against pharmaceuticals. There's a time and place. I don't want to get too political here, also about, things like vaccines and stuff, but there is totally a time and place for acute medicine, Western science, Western medicine. There's totally a time and place. And the problem is, though, is our society, especially in North America, and I think all over the world now, pretty much, um, the pharmaceutical industry has a lot of power and, really like is indoctrinated in our main medical system. And therefore, those doctors just use one tool typically. Um, and that's pharmaceuticals. Like you have a problem, so I'm going to give you this pill that seems to help it. And yeah, you'll probably get some help. Um, I'm thinking like of any personal examples I know of people who went on drugs for this stuff. And honestly, I've either heard like nothing changed or I got all these other symptoms. Or yeah, it's better. Yeah. Like not full, like, fuck, yes, wow, it changed my life. You know what I mean? So my work is all about looking at it more holistically. How can, you heal your body and work with your nervous system and look at these I don't even like the word issue. Look at this phenomenon as a whole picture, not just as, this direct, like, here, I've got a solution. So, yeah, then we'll go into like the terms about pre-orgasmic. And pre-orgasmic is a word I do Okay, first and foremost, I'm all about whenever a client comes to me, they're going to use their own like wiki definition of whatever's going on with them, right? And in my health journey with my Lyme disease, like a lot of labels really helped me. Like, at 14, when I was told that like I must have fibromyalgia, but also not to Google it because then it's going to put me down a rabbit hole and fibromyalgia is all in your head 15, 16 years ago. So when I did go down the rabbit hole of looking into fibromyalgia, it actually really helped me because I finally like started to, define what was going on with me. I'm tenacious. I will never give up in my healing. I mean, okay, never say never. I would love some like peace and like smooth sailing for a minute, but I don't know. I'm on this journey. I never stop. I'm never fully satisfied. So I also just like understand the concept that like it's always ebbing and flowing, right? So, a lot of people like they'll get the fibromyalgia definition and they'll be like, okay, I have this. And like, I'm not going past it. Like, I just have it. Give me some drugs or whatever. And don't get me wrong, like, it's a really big deal to even like get that diagnosis slash take something for it, speak up for it, this kind of stuff. So to go further than that can be very, very, very difficult. We also talk about like privilege and such here. So yeah, if you want to stay at one level, that's fine. I actually support that. Sometimes I'm envious of the people who can just kind of start coasting at one level. I'm not that person. So, but it's brought me here today on this podcast, being a healer, coaching other people, these kinds of things, right? So a lot of people, will self-label and such or get a diagnosis from a doctor or whatever, right? And pre-orgasmic is a word that I find it like a nice soft word because it means you're going to orgasm. And the number one thing to know about orgasm, unless you have like a severe like nervous system disorder, um or something like this, where like you cannot orgasm. And it's very interesting because like quadriplegic people can still orgasm because where the nerve goes, it's not through your spine, it's through like the front of your spine. So when typical spinal cords are severed, typically the nerve that runs from your genitals is not severed. So and okay, this is the thing too, like a lot of people lose their be I want to be clear too, because like quadriplegic people, therefore they can't use their muscles down there, so therefore they lose continence and such like that. So these things are a bit different, but your pleasure center and the nerve from your genitals that provides you pleasure to your brain is typically not severed. So yeah, in general, most people like honestly, I haven't heard of a case. I've definitely heard of cases where, people live their whole lives without orgasm or something like this, but orgasm is also like I was defining it in the last episode, like how do you self-define orgasm? How can you expand your concept beyond, this one definition and things like that, right? So a lot of pre-orgasmic people, like what I always tell people is like people are orgasming way more than they think they are. They're just not fully conscious of like what an orgasm really is, what pleasure really is, right? Like if you feel pleasure, like you have orgasmic capacity, you are orgasmic. We're all orgasmic beings if we feel pleasure, right? And there is some people who don't feel pleasure at all, but it's nuanced and it's vast, right? Like if you've read this book Existential Kink, right? If you never feel pleasure, can you find pleasure in your unpleasures? So it gets very nuanced and personal. And my work is all about like what is it to you personally? People come to me with a goal of the typical definition, and I want that for them. Like if that's what they want, I want that for them. I'm not going to tell you like don't have clitoral orgasms because blah blah blah, it's not the best type of orgasm or some shit. Like I'm not going to tell you that. Like if that's what you want, like I want that for you. Like that's what my coaching is all about. It's not like me advising you which way is the best way. And it's about this like relationship, me with you and then you with your own body and your own pleasure, and how can I help bring that authenticity out in you. So if you don't want to do coaching and you just want to like do things on your own, how can you bring it out in yourself? How can you find your own definition of pleasure? How can you expand your own, right? And I guarantee you You're more orgasmic than you think you are, but we're so stuck in our cortex. We hear online it should be this way or that way or what the fuck ever, and we're stuck with that, right? And then we're stuck with that versus like our childhood was usually either zero example of pleasure and orgasm, or the church telling us like no fucking way, you're not allowed to have any pleasure, control, 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 right? So that's how I feel about kind of this word pre-orgasmic. I don't hate it because, it means like you have hope. Right? And then there's this word anorgasmia when I was kind of looking at like more technical definitions. Anorgasmia is a type of sexual dysfunction in which a person cannot achieve orgasm despite adequate stimulation. Anorgasmia is far more common in females than males and is especially rare in younger men. Oh my God. I fucking hate these definitions on the internet, eh? The problem is greater in women who are post-menopausal. In males, it is closely associated with delayed ejaculation. Anorgasmia can often cause sexual frustration. Well, the last sentence there, I guess, is true. But let's dissect this a little bit. Sexual dysfunction. People think they are way more sexually dysfunct than they are. Like I said about the fibromyalgia thing, like it's nice and it feels good to like pick a definition, pick like a diagnosis for yourself and wear it. And honestly, it can really help in some ways. Like, I'm not against that completely. Like, when I found out I have Lyme disease, I'm not like, telling people like, oh, I'm just, I don't know, fucked up. But I'm not actually fucked up. Well, that is kind of what I'm telling people. But having Lyme disease led me to healing so fucking much, right? So, or getting that diagnosis and such. So this diagnosis is not necessarily a bad thing at all, right? So sexual dysfunction. If you take the label of I don't have function in my sexualness in my sexuality or whatever, like I am broken, I am dysfunctional. Claims of being broken means you're in trauma response, right? So can you differentiate? Can you say like, okay, yeah, I may have a problem, but I also understand that like I can commit and shift this problem, right? Or are you stuck 2 feet in the one side where it's like, okay, I have a problem and woe is me, that's more of like trauma response, or 2 feet in the other side, say, I'm going to completely deny anything's wrong with me. I'm just going to spiritually bypass and just like, I don't know, go in 5D world or some bullshit, right? So like, I believe in like being in both worlds, right? And something like about tantra that I've really learned is the concept of like, okay, yeah, like we're spiritual cosmic beings, but like can we be on this earth, in this real world, in this intersectionality of helping justice for others, helping justice for ourselves, and and like what is this human experience like trying to teach me in a way? um like, yeah, I might have something wrong with me, but like what is the journey of that, right? And tantra is all about like expanding your human experience. So if you stop at like, okay, I'm dysfunctional sexually, and you just stop there and you're like, okay, I'll just become asexual then or something, that is fully your right. Like, okay, totally. But what is genuine to you? You know, do you want to overcome? Do you want pleasure in your life? You know, a huge part of preventing orgasm is like literally just denying yourself pleasure, right? I'll get into that in a bit more depth later. Cannot achieve orgasm despite adequate stimulation. Well, what the fuck is adequate stimulation? I'm not gonna, I don't know, put a stereotype word on this. I'm like, I just want to say like a name or something, right? Anyway, like what is adequate stimulation and who the hell are you to tell me what is, right? Like if you can get all the stimulation in the fucking world, but if you cannot get out of your head and into your body, if you do not feel safe, if you cannot surrender, like you will never get there. You won't. So adequate like stimulation is not directly associated to orgasm. I can orgasm without any stimulation. I can just call in stimulation. I'm like, I don't have to have any touch, any vibrators, nothing to orgasm. Like I can use energy or other things, right? So that is also just not for me. Far more common in females than males. Okay, right? You read this, you're a female, and you're like, oh, it's more common, it's more of like a thing, and you take that label on or whatever. Then males, oh, I'm a male, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have this problem because it's not as common in males, and blah, blah, blah. And then, like, God forbid you're then another gender, you're not even included in this definition, right? Like, ugh. And then, post greater in women who are postmenopausal. I mean, who did this research, right? We've been taught, as far as I can ever remember, only now I'm starting to hear more amazing things about being postmenopausal and about this crone archetype that women phase into that is fucking incredible and super sexual. So, as far as I can remember though, back, like there's been a bad stigma around being postmenopausal. Like that's not helpful to read that. And then in males, it's closely associated with delayed ejaculation. Like I said in the orgasm one, like it's so, like in men, it's so associated, men and penis body, so associated to this ejaculation, like then therefore they're missing all these other orgasms, right? And yeah, frustration, this causes frustration. Yeah, okay, well, I will agree with that one because I'm frustrated. So then in anorgasmia, there's kind of two kind of definitions from here. It's primary anorgasmia and secondary. Primary is you've never had an orgasm, and secondary is loss of or a shift or change or not as much or whatever. Yeah, and that's a nice, I'm not against that definition, right? Because some people have never had orgasms, and that those are people I work with. And then some people have a loss of or change. I also work with those people. So like this is real. Like this is not fake. This is completely real. And I'm not saying also, like when I say like you're orgasming more than you think you are, I'm not trying to discredit pre-orgasmic. I'm not trying to discredit like primary anorgasmia. I'm really not trying to discredit that. I just want you to open your whole world a little bit more so you can let more pleasure in. And but if you identify as that, like that's okay, and there are resources and I'm here for you. And yeah, so these are kind of definitions of like these problems in orgasm. There's got to be a better word for problems, but anyway. And then, what prevents orgasms, right? So not orgasming as much as we could be, because we could be totally wild orgasmic beings, but we deny ourselves for so many reasons. And I've got a list of some reasons here. So which one should we go into first? I think society. I think society is kind of the umbrella, the overarching. So, when I talk about society, I talk about, I think, mainly patriarchy, because I don't like to diss religion too much, because like, even in Islam, in the Quran, it says like women have the right to be sexually satisfied in their marriages, right? So yeah, there's some problematic things in there, like in their marriages. What about outside? Blah, 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 blah. But like, it literally says that in the Quran. Like, I kid you not. So the fact that, like, it does claim in some religions, like, of women sexual satisfactory, um you know I also really inherently believe that religion was kind of based on something better than it is today, and patriarchy, agriculture, capitalism, this controlling of women, is what kind of this power trip that patriarchy went on. And men, especially white men, they were like, okay, well, how can we control people? Well, we're going to use religion, because it's a great basis of fear. It's many people follow it for genuine reasons, so that's a great way to, like, flip it on them and fuck them up with it, right? Like, do I think Jesus was going around telling homosexuals to be condemned to hell, and that you know priests shouldn't have any sex, and neither should nuns, and suppressing women's sexuality? No, I really don't inherently believe that at all. um Even in the concepts of, like, I don't want to get too deep in religion, but like in Islam, like, denying women of multiple partners, but only men can have multiple wives. Well, the basis in that was from the fact that, like, a lot of men were dying in war, and at this time in society, um, you needed to be in matrimony with a man and a woman for many societal reasons, and therefore the religion opened it up to be more inclusive, of more woman to man ratio, and it wasn't just about, like, a man having control over and such. So, and it was based in, like, you have to be able to provide your resources all equally to all of them. So, I don't believe religion inherently, like, wanted to do all the fucking horrible things it's doing, but definitely in this day and age, I know so many people completely traumatized by the church and this kind of stuff, right? Which I feel is really based in patriarchy and kind of started in agricultural times, in Europe, and it it's what started this whole, like, control indoctrination and such. And, like, I need more resources than my tribe mate, right? Before, it was much more communal. And this was, tribe and community was practiced in all races all over the world, right? So society, nowadays, patriarchy, capitalism, industrial revolution came, and we're trying to exploit women with marketing, facing this unobtainable picture of people, selling houses in Beverly Hills. Shit like this, right? So, you know, I just, like, people really don't understand, like, how much of a disadvantage women have over men, and then, to be other genders as well on top of that, being completely denied your existence. Um, oof, it's just, you just start out so behind, and then being BIPOC on top of that, um poverty, these kinds of things, right? And there's a big sense of, like, okay, everyone in poverty or with disability has no right to any pleasure, right? The US has this great model of going to university and then being so in debt when you come out that you never will get out. You know, all these stressors of society, our society is not set up for us to have genuine pleasure with each other, right? It's so set up for failure in that. And then on top of it, it's like even this like fake pleasure, right? Like, okay, yeah, Ferraris are cool cars. Like I'm a person who's into cars, but like, you know, that's not what really, really fucking matters. It's not. And hear it from me. I was a sugar baby. I've hung out with rich people, okay? And most of them are either faking it or miserable. You know, they're really like missing. Um, they're missing like this tenderness of the world that when I was working with some of the most impoverished people in the world, like they have this like happiness and pleasure that I never saw anywhere else in Western society of keeping up with the Joneses, right? So yeah, there's so many factors there when it comes to society. And then, you know, it plays into our health, right? Like our nervous systems therefore get fucked up. We we're just like not healthy beings, you know, we're addicted to coffee or alcohol or whatever to like get through the day. We work way too fucking much. Our, you know, this capitalism society is all about like perform, 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 not like you never have enough, these kinds of things. Even like in the coaching business, I see like business coaches and like it's all about, okay, I was making like 10K months. Now I have to make 40K months. Now I have to make 100K months. And like 100K months are low. So like I have to make, you know, more than that. Like it's just like, why? Like why? Right? So yeah, it's just I'm all for, you know, people having money and making money and such, and like especially getting the resource of money in women and non-binary and other genders hands. What, you know, what would the world be like if you know we controlled it, right? It'd probably be a lot different. Anyway. So, you know, our health suffers because of that, right? Like our nervous system suffers, our physical health suffers. Do you know how many people have their backs thrown out? Like fucking everyone, okay? Sciatica like is rampant, right? Because we then sit too much and all these reasons, right? And we're just in complete denial. We'd rather, you know, go to a chiropractor and like keep getting cracked as opposed to like actually doing the exercises to like shift our muscles, right? I mean, I was a Pilates instructor for the past like 5 years, and it was so cool seeing people who actually like committed to shifting their body in functional ways, how much it did it for their life. Like, holy shit, right? So, and it actually doesn't take that much commitment, but you know, people would rather eat the sugar than eat the protein, right? They just are addicted. Their nervous systems are addicted. We're fucking traumatized. We're not going to go, you know, into our trauma because we're so scared to do so. That's why like the coaching method I use is based in Tantra. It's based in like exploring and accepting pleasure to then go in and repattern those traumatic patterns in us. So yeah, if you listen to the episode with me and Miranda, Sex Workers Are Saving the World, she talks about our coaching together, and yeah, like how it's so indirect. Like you think it might be from this instance, but usually doesn't have to do with that instance. It has to do with something sooner or ancestral even. You know, the health of our ancestors. Like if you were the colonizers, you know, you were often forced into like killing people and all these things, right? And then if you were the indigenous people, like, holy shit, or like the slaves, literally, like even worse, right? So our health really suffers. And then so the next point I have here is like sobriety and substance. Then we become addicted to substance, right? Like, alcohol is a depressant, but we reach for it when we're depressed. Like, it's a vicious cycle, right? And sobriety is so interesting because, wow, what it's done for my nervous system. Like, it was fucking tough to get through, like, don't get me wrong, but now I've repatterned my nervous system and I really don't crave it anymore at all. And I have a long history of alcoholism in my family that I had to like reprogram and overcome. And then it was I would say specifically alcohol. Like, I was a bit into drugs. Like, don't get me wrong, I love drugs, but it wasn't like super out of control with like party drugs. But alcohol, it for sure was. Like, that was my substance. Like, I didn't want to feel my nervous system when I did oh my God, what's it called? Neurofeedback therapy. They scanned my brain and my alpha wave was functioning at 1,000% overdrive and climbing. My doctor was even like, I've never seen this in my practice in like many, many years. And I like had to show all my colleagues everything because I was just like way, way, way overstimulated. So I had no energy for the rest of my body. My brain was just like not functioning well. And your alpha wave is your fight or flight, right? Like, most of us are stuck in this cycle of fight or flight. And, substance abuse is a symptom of trauma, right? So if we are numbing ourselves with something or trying to get like an external experience, um how can we have pleasure? How can we have surrender? Right? How can we then open ourselves to the cosmos? And that's why it's very interesting with psychedelics, because yes, 100% I believe that psychedelics can really help us like get to surrender and cosmic, but you really got to do the work for them to properly sustain you. Yeah, like, you can go and have multiple psychedelic experiences. A lot of people then have like psychotic breaks and like turn schizophrenic. I literally know people personal this has happened to, with like lower key substances as well. Like, I literally know people who've had it with weed as well. They become schizophrenic after it. And these kinds of things. So if you're doing these substances without like the proper work, good luck. Yeah, good luck. I mean, it's just not what I would recommend. There is a lot of now coaches, and I even a friend of mine wrote a book called Psyched, talking about this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really interesting world where it can definitely be therapeutic in so many better ways than other things. But in my experience, it has to be done the right way. And I know people who've done it the right way, and they're quite cosmic beings, right? So yeah, like, going to a rave and taking a bunch of acid is not necessarily going to like solve your problems, right? So yeah, sobriety, substance, how it can shift your nervous system for the better. Like, I'm probably do a whole episode on sobriety, but sobriety fucking changed my life. You have no idea. Like, whew, it's given me so many gifts in my life, and it's really given me so much depth in the work that I do in Tantra, and so many fucking wild cosmic orgasms. Like, I was not having the orgasms I'm having now when I was indulging in substance. And you know what? Even indulging in substance once in a while can keep you on that cyclical nervous system train. but I do bad things. Like I'm trying to get off coffee, but I have diagnosis of dysfunctional mitochondria, which coffee doesn't help, but when I can't get out of bed, like I need it, right? um I eat bad food and whatever, right? So I'm not perfect, I'm not saying that, but specifically like alcohol, cocaine, weed, these kinds of things, getting off of them can be extremely, extremely life-changing. So, and I know I'm probably going to get some clap back about weed. I'm sure I'll do a whole episode on my opinions about all this stuff. But it changes your whole system. And I'm trying to get into, as organic of a system as I can. But then again, I live in society and I'm a part of society and I pay taxes and I'm not against paying taxes and these kinds of things, right? So how can I, balance it, right? How can I balance it? And I believe anything you do cyclical, like you are addicted to. So that's a great place to start. Like if you wake up every single morning and have a cup of coffee, okay, that's something cyclical. If you masturbate before bedtime every single day, that's something cyclical. You got to look at that. If you masturbate like in the exact same way, this kind of thing, or even if you do it like literally at the same time every day or something, cyclical. I'm all about like shifting your cyclical and expanding away from that. And it will help your orgasms. So what else do I have here? I guess I can start talking about SSRIs here. I recently engaged in my community talking about this topic, and I'm not a doctor. I am not qualified in my scope of practice to tell you to get on or off SSRIs. So let's just like make that headline first. And so I was talking about it with a friend, and we've been talking about this book she's reading. In the end, I don't want to name this book because I have learned that this author has gone very right wing, and even their previous work has discrepancy to it. So I'm not going to name the author for that reason. If you really want to know, you can hit me up. I'll tell you, no problem. But the kind of lowdown of what this author had to say about SSRIs is that SSRIs increase the satiety response, which is directly contrary to desire, because desire is a craving for satiety. So satiety, the feeling or state of being like satisfied, right? And it's SSRI increasing the satiety response, like the satisfaction response, is contrary to desire, because then you're missing desire, right? That's what we're saying here. And because desire is a craving for satiety, right? So SSRIs are a huge dampener of libido and also to orgasm. And having low libido / orgasmic drive then in turn deprives you of the dopamine production of orgasms. With blended and cervical orgasms, now all types of orgasms, being bigger producers of dopamine than clitoral orgasm. So this specific thing I'm saying here, I've tried to look for, where this kind of comes from. I haven't exactly found it. And my advice and my knowledge around orgasm comes from gathering so many different advices, so many different teachers, and all these kinds of things, on top of my personal experience, on top of my experience working with clients. and my community, working with clients, and, sharing it all and kind of gathering it all. And it's interesting, this specific thing here, because remember when I was talking about defining orgasm and I was talking about clitoral orgasm and how Taoists and some people think of clitoral orgasms as like immature orgasms. Um, my understanding here, so clitoral orgasms is more that like peak pleasure and then like expelling and like releasing, right? So I find like clitoral orgasms have more of this like quickness to them, more of this like eating sugar response, versus like the other ones are like eating protein. Like it's like a slow release. It's like matcha versus coffee. um so when you're having blended and other types of orgasms, there's more of this like wave going on in your orgasm. You like go up and down and you're surfing these waves and floating around and woo, and you can elongate the pleasure way more. But clitoral orgasm and penis bodied like ejaculatory orgasm is often this like peak and expel, right? Like quicker, and then like maybe you want to fall asleep after or something. There's less of this like elongating. And people who clitoral orgasm like very easily, I've often heard like their experience is that when they clitoral orgasm first, then the rest of their orgasms aren't as incredible. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Aren't as intense and such. So it's like becomes a disappointment kind of after them. Personally, it's hard for me to clitoral orgasm. So I actually really like this about myself, that like that's my finale piece if I need it at that point. Like after I have all these orgasms with a lover, I actually don't orgasm with lovers very easily at all. It takes like a lot of work and a lot of like direct stimulation and such, and a lot of safety, and it's hard for me to feel safety with a partner. So especially because I have a lot of casual sex. So building a real deep lovership with someone definitely makes it easier, but it's still whatever, not as easy. And so I have all these wild orgasms, and then at the very end I go for my finale, sometimes with a vibrator or whatever. And even it's interesting, like I have this new lover, and he can have ejaculatory orgasms, like more than one in a few hours. And so he says like his first is so intense, and then the ones after that are not as intense, and I'm trying to help him have ones in between and other types of orgasms. So like it's very cool. Actually, one of my lovers, I actually started teaching him multiple orgasm, and it's very cool. He's like having multiple orgasms, and then he has like the ejaculatory orgasm at the end, and it's a pretty cool experience. So yeah, like women are a bit more privy, is that the word, to having like more of these multi-orgasmic experiences. But some women or clitoral bodied beings, when they have like a first clitoral orgasm really quickly, I can teach you how to bring that energy back into your body, and then have other orgasms on top of that. But if you're having clitoral or ejaculatory orgasms and you're just expelling all your energy, then it's going to be harder to kind of have these other ones. And okay, my main point with this is that dopamine. So like you'll get like a rush of dopamine with this clitoral orgasm or ejaculatory orgasm, and then it will be like a rush, and then like relaxation of it. So kind of like with coffee, you'll get like a high, a burst of energy, and then it'll drop like decently quickly, right? But it's, as opposed to like matcha, it will like slowly release over time, and you'll like have more extended energy. So the other types of orgasms give more of like a slow release dopamine over time, and you can kind of play with like peaking it and lowering it, and it's just more like malleable. That's a really good word. It's more malleable, the dopamine response. And what does it say at the end here? And less of this access to dopamine then makes us more depressed. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle. So yeah, so SSRIs, they put you in kind of this vicious cycle. Now, don't get me wrong, like SSRIs change people's lives for the better. Like, don't get me wrong here. I'm not completely against them or something. Like, I'm not against vibrators completely or anything like that. But what is your deep feeling about it? And do you have the privilege and capacity to work so deep on yourself that you can shift it for yourself and maybe come off SSRIs? That was my experience. I did a lot of fucking hard tantra work and I got off of them. So, and now I'm on, like, full disclosure, I'm on some naturopathic SSRIs like St. John's wort and 5-HTP. So I'm not completely off of like mental health stuff. I've had a lot of mental health issues in my life. I've been suicidal. I've attempted suicide multiple times. And I've also just been like so deeply depressed. I was diagnosed with BPD, which is, let's open mental health another day. So yeah, like I've been through the mental health ringer, like don't get me wrong, but where my mental health is today, holy fucking shit. Like it's completely new. Like now when I have emotions, I can just have them. I don't get stuck in them forever and these kinds of things. I definitely have my down days. I'm also, battling my disability and chronic illness. And yeah, like I have days where I cannot get out of bed physically and mentally, right? So, but I can ebb and flow now. I can live more of a normal life. So yeah, it's completely changed. A big part of it was treating my autoimmune. Big part of it. I can also go make a whole podcast on that episode one day. But yeah, like, do we have heavy metals in us? All these kinds of things, right? Like I was on birth control since I was 14 because I was swimming competitively at the time and my periods were too big. So I was like losing too much iron per se. And so they were like, okay, here's birth control, like at fucking 14. I mean, thank God they did, because I never got pregnant because I was a total slut then. But but like that fucked me up good. So there's so many factors here is my point, right? So moving past SSRIs, like I said too, it's a lot about privilege. It's a lot about privilege here, right? Like I'm very lucky. Like my mom could help support my health stuff. And I mean, then again, like I went into tons of debt to do it, but there's no better expense for me because I had to go through private naturopathy because like MDs kept completely denying my experience. So, I have whole society denying my experience. Like, how can I have pleasure, right? It's really, there's a lot of nuance and like specific stories here, right? So then it goes into too, like community and friendship, right? We're so pushed away from community. Like, wow. I mean, the amount of like friend betrayal I've had in my life, like it was so hard for me to get into community, but now like I'm thriving in fucking community. I can't believe how healing it's been. It's just been so incredible. When I went with my main teacher, Layla Martin, to the jungle in Costa Rica like last month, um, with 90 of my peers there, and I showed up as my full self. The one thing I said to Layla Martin, I said, the fact that I didn't get in trouble on this trip is just like so incredible, because like I get in trouble everywhere I go. I'm either too naked, too loud, too this or too that. Every report card I've ever had said Nadia talks too much. And look at me now on a podcast, right? So when we get these like beliefs in our head, it fucks us up, right? And it fucks our whole system up. And then we can't like have pleasure, right? you know, Having friendships that you can, like, a lot of my clients, they have to get over the like, oh, this is TMI. And I'm like, honey, nothing is TMI with me. Right. And then they're like, I've never been able to tell anyone this, or I have no one else to talk about sex with. Like, if I do, they'll just tell me their experience, and then I'll feel total shame that I'm not having the same experience as them. Right. So, like, having friends who can just like hold space for you, and it's out there. We are all craving it. You just have to go and find it for yourself. It's not easy. It's not easy. And again, privilege plays a huge, huge role. But you can slowly start to build it for yourself. Your partner or lack thereof, right? So it's like partner or self-love, right? Like, do you love yourself? Like, do you love yourself? And you know what? It's so hard to get this concept of loving yourself until you get it. When you get it, you're just like, whoa, wait a second, what? Um, you may think you love yourself, you may think, and then when you really do, it's just such a big difference. And how much safety does your partner create for you? Your partner doesn't have to be this super enlightened being, but can they hold space for you? Can they hold you compassionately without understanding your experience? Can they talk about their vulnerability and their sexual experience? Can they support your journey and your sexuality? It's complicated. It's fucking complicated, and we've been taught very specific way to have partnerships, and it sucks. It sucks what we've been told, right? So it's this unlearning to relearn. And is your partner receptive to that? And if they're not receptive to that, can you leave? A lot of people cannot leave their partnerships. It takes a lot of courage, bravery, privilege, right? And then yourself, your relationship to yourself. Like, can you self pleasure? Can you fuck yourself? Right? Like, can you fuck yourself? So how are you hell gonna fuck anyone else? Right? These kinds of things. Our environment and such, right? It's this ecosystem we have to create for ourselves in order to like really be in pleasure, right? And then it comes to safety. So it's a huge privilege to feel safety, right? Like, anyone in BIPOC communities, disability, neurodivergency, queerness, gender fluidity, different genders, transgender. Feeling safe is very, very difficult. I mean, I have clients who don't fit in any of those boxes and still don't feel safe in their bodies, and then the challenges to have on top of that is deep. And do you have a partner who gets that? Like, what if your partner doesn't fit into those boxes, but you do they understand that, or can they hold compassion for you even if they don't understand it? Like, a lot of them can't. It's very difficult. So it's a lot. And really this kind of cycle of it is this, like, first you start to become aware. Second is this like unlearning and then relearning, right? And then, like, are you denying yourself of pleasure? Like, really sitting with yourself and going into that. Like, are you denying yourself of pleasure? Like, do you have the belief that you don't deserve pleasure? And most of us do. Okay. Most of us do. And then even, I'm not going to get on like the woe me of men, but even, cis hetero men struggle with it too, right? Like, they get all these mixed messages. They're being told like they have it all figured out. They should be the doms and blah, 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 blah. And then like, you know, their partners or other parts of society are telling them like, no, you're assholes and you don't have it figured out and it should be about me and whatever, right? Like all these mixed messages. Even if you're not like denying yourself, like, are you confused? Are you just fucking confused, right? And then so if you start to let yourself have pleasure, can you find safety and confidence in that? Like bravery. So can you find the bravery to then go and find safety and confidence in it? And you know what? There are people on this earth who will never, never feel safe. This was something in anti-racism training that I got, is like when you're inviting BIPOC people into your space, like know that their bodies automatically will not feel safe, and having awareness of inviting them into bravery as opposed to just be like, here's a safe space, like, you know, like, no, it's not a safe space for everyone. As much as you want it to be that, it is not. And even they may consciously think that it is, but their bodies might not, right? It's about their journey and their experience in your space, right? So creating a brave space, you know, shifting it from like, this is safe to like, no, this is a brave space where we're going to listen to the feedback and do what we can to shift this space, right? And can people, like, I'm almost getting emotional talking about this. So, you know, can people feel that in their own bodies? And a lot of people will never feel safety in their body. They have too much like ancestral, all these kinds of things, right? So if you cannot feel safe in your body, like how can you then find surrender, right? So safety and confidence and bravery, like even if you never feel safety in your body, there's not loss of hope for you, for sure. You know, you can find bravery and confidence, totally. There's not loss of hope for you. I really want to name that. But you know, even just knowing that your body doesn't feel safe, just knowing that and like embodying it and like holding space for that. This is a big part of the coaching that I do. Huge part. Not trying to shift it. Don't try to shift it and change it. That's what a lot of typical normal therapy is about. This is not about that. This is about holding space for the unsafety, holding space for it and not trying to change it, and see if it can feel more comfortable, you know, in your embrace, so to say. And, you know, can you then find like confidence and bravery in that? You know, and if you can, then, you know, really the key to orgasm is not ejaculation. It's not these 10 to 15 pulses. It's this surrender. It's the surrender. Like, can you get out of your mind and into your body and fucking surrender? And then, you know, that's where then the cosmic play comes in, witchiness and all that other shit, right? And not to say you can't have, you know, the cosmic play without surrender or without, you know, orgasm. You totally can. But I would say the biggest key to surrender is, or the biggest key to orgasm is the surrender piece, getting out of your mind and into your body and like letting whatever happens. And I'll definitely go into more detail about that in another podcast. But, you know, and then the key to surrender is safety, bravery, and this confidence. And then the key to that is like not denying yourself of pleasure and like learning what is pleasure authentically to you. And then the key to that is this like consciousness, unlearning, relearning, right? So, you know, what prevents orgasms? Fucking everything. Like it's against us. Our society is against us. But, you know, you fucking deserve pleasure. You are worthy of pleasure, and learning your worthiness and deservingness will bring you so many fucking gifts, will bring you so much pleasure. and expansion, like really this expansion, can you feel so safe and brave that you can surrender so much so that if anything happened in your sexual experience, if you got fucking raged and you needed to like punch a wall, if you needed to cry, if you needed to laugh hysterically, if you needed to scream your loudest scream, roar like a lion, start speaking fucking tongues, Slytherin or whatever that, like snake sounding, you know, speaking to your ancestors, can you like open the channel and surrender to whatever comes? Can you, be fine with pissing or shitting your pants or shitting the bed or whatever, right? Like, can you be so safe and brave that, you let all your ejaculatory fluid flow, right? Like, how many people can do that? I mean, like, even me, like I struggle with some things because I've got like some severe IBS issues, right? So like, I hold back in many ways. My favorite place to get wild is in the shower because, I feel like more anything can happen, and with myself, number one. And then I'm still learning sexual partnership and how to really surrender in it. And it takes time. It's a lifelong, slowly shifting things. But I completely believe in your ability. If you're listening to this right now, I completely believe in your ability, 1,000%. And I'm always here to guide you through it, to help you in it. And yeah, that's what I'm here for. And creating this community around this and getting this fucking word out, like even just people hearing these things that I'm saying more and more and more, it becomes more acceptable in society. And like, I was talking about this post someone posted about how to be quiet in sex or something when housemates are there or whatever. Well, I believe we should normalize sexual sounding. Like, we should fucking normalize it. Imagine it was normal to be loud during sex. Oh, the orgasms that could happen, so just thinking about it in different ways, and how can you starting to embody it shift society and shift collective and shift orgasms for all. Because those people who have such a hard time reaching safety, that are not privileged enough to reach these places or get there, me making it more normal in society to do these things makes it safer for these people, makes it easier for these people. And this is what I'm talking about, intersectionality. And this is what I'm talking about. It's not all about you. This is what I'm talking about. You can only come so far in your personal healing until you really have to work on healing others as well, and the collective, and bringing everyone into this space. This is what it's about. Me making it, you listening to this podcast and sharing it with a friend, you listening to this and living more in this way, or just like starting to have little conversations around it, like spreads it, right? It's the osmosis of it. Like, I don't want to use like the reference of the world, what the world is going through in pandemic, but it's like that. Imagine like a orgasmic COVID, imagine that spread all over the world instead. What would our world be like, right? How much safer would it be for people to be in pleasure and orgasm? And if we were all in pleasure and orgasm, what would our world be like, right? I'm like literally gonna cry saying this, so I'm gonna go have a crygasm. And I love you all so much, and this is really the importance of spreading it. So please slide into my DMs, and so much fucking love. And if you can't fuck yourself, how the hell are you gonna fuck somebody else? So get fucking yourself. Oh, so much love. Mwah.